Hi, welcome to Mini Maths at Distance Education Centre Victoria. Today we're going to find out what it is about fractions that makes them fractions. Fractions appear in many different ways in our number system. Fractions are the parts of the numbers that aren't whole. So for example, from 0 to 1 is a whole number, but these parts, equal parts, are eighths, and we don't quite get to 1. If we get to here, we're 7/8 of the way. Here is another example of a fraction, 8/16. There are 16 equal parts, 8 are coloured, so that makes it a half. Here we have 8 equal parts, 4 are coloured, 4 are not. That makes it 4/8, which is the same as a half. And of course you can have fractions of a whole group. Here we have 3 groups of 4 apples, and one group of 4 apples has got worms in them, so that is 1/3 of the apples. These fractions are related to our multiplication tables, so we'll look at those another day. Now, what's not a fraction? Anything that is not equally shared, like these here, is not a fraction, because the whole idea of a fraction is equal parts. Now let's have a look how we know if a number is a fraction. Well, it's not a whole number. It's part of a number or part of a group. A fraction is between whole numbers. For example, 2.5 is more than 2 but less than 3. A fraction looks like this. Another way to show a fraction is a decimal fraction, like that. A fraction is if you take a whole group and share it equally. And it's an equal section on a number line if you are counting. Now, the nice thing about fractions is you can do the same thing with fractions as you can do with numbers. Sometimes the results can be a little bit strange, but a fraction can be odd or it can be even. A number, so you can have sevenths and you can have 11ths, and they're all good fractions as long as they're equal parts. When you have a fraction, you can add, subtract, divide or multiply, and fractions are very useful for sharing equally. The thing I like about a fraction, it is a sharing or a division problem. So if I took one thing and cut it into 2 equal parts, I'd have a half. So one thing shared equally 2 ways, each person would get a half. The bottom number of a fraction is the denominator. It tells us how many equal parts there are. The top number is the numerator. It tells us how many we're working with or how many we're counting. This is how it looks. Here is a denominator. These fractions each have 2 equal parts. 1 is the numerator because it tells us that only one part of each is shaded, and this is the dividing or the sharing line. The technical name for that is vinculum. I love that word, but all you need to know is this is the part of the fraction that tells us that we're taking one thing and we're sharing it equally into 2 parts. Here is another way of looking at the same principle. We've got 4 equal parts here. Working with one of those parts is a quarter, and of course you've got the sharing equally sign. And let's have a look at what you know about fractions. Equal parts, shared equally, very important. Groups can be shared equally, and fractions can be on a number line in between things. Now, what do you know about fractions? These are the important ideas you need to remember. A fraction represents a part of anything whole that is shared equally. A fraction is a number between whole numbers. It will be more than 5 but less than 6. A fraction is one or more parts of a group of objects that has been shared equally. That idea is connected to your tables. Another way to show a division is as a fraction. So a half is the same as one thing shared equally between 2 people, and each person would get a half. The other great thing about fractions is there are so many different types of fractions. You can have a proper fraction where you've got a numerator and a denominator. You've got an improper fractions where you do have a numerator and a denominator, but the top number is bigger than the bottom number. Very interesting. You can have fractions that are mixed numbers, which means they have a whole number and half or a third or a quarter or a 15th, it doesn't matter, but you've got a whole number with a fraction. I particularly like these. They're a bit of a personal favourite because as soon as you get 5/5 or 7/7 or 10/10 or 15/15, you will always have one. And you've got equivalent fractions, so this little quarter can appear as 2/8, 3/12, 4/16, 5/20, or as a decimal fraction, which is 0.25. Decimal fractions are always expressed as tenths, hundreds, or thousands, but that's another big idea for another day. And the other tricky way that fractions turn up is as percentages. So you can see the world of fraction is really exciting. There's a lot to learn, and when you know the basic rules or principles, they become fun to work with. Thank you.